Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Today's topic is going to be a little different. Some aren't meant to lead, and some aren't meant to be led. I know you might be thinking, what? Well, let's just peel it back, shall we? Many of us have worked in different aspects of our career or many different organizations potentially, right? If you've been with one or two your entire life, that would be saying something. That's probably not a bad thing. But when we peel the onion back a little bit, what do we find? We find that even with the workforce, some folks come in and they're aligned with the work. They're aligned with the vision and the purpose of what's going on there, right? And for some, not unlike a reason, a season, or a lifetime, it's just the same thing, folks. In in organizations, sometimes it's for a reason. Sometimes somebody comes in, because they just want to earn some money for a season because they're on a journey. They're on their own personal journey to go somewhere and do something else, or it could be longer, right? That season or that one would be the reason the season would be longer. Maybe it's a few years if somebody's working their way through school or something of the like, right? Building up a skill set. And it might be too, the season element of this might come also because folks realize that there's only so many leadership roles, there's only so much room to advance in medium to small organizations anyway, right? So it only makes sense that some folks are going to move on so that they can. To move up means they need to move on, right? Because there isn't always room, right? There isn't always room, and there isn't always turnover quickly because there are fewer, right? Leadership folks and leadership and support staff folks in an organization. It's just a fact of life. Or a lifetime, right? If he just happens to be a sweet spot, you have the absolute niche skill set, right? And you've built up your skills and you become a leader over time in an organization. That can happen and does happen on occasion. So there's different scenarios. Of course, there's variance in everything we do and every element and aspect of what we do. But we can also see too, when we pan back a little bit, those folks that maybe came in to lead, and you can tell because you can see it. You can see that other people can tell, right? That somebody who's leading them really isn't cut out to lead them. They may have earned the spot of leader. They may have worked their way up. Now, look, folks, a fine artist isn't necessarily a business manager, right, or an owner. That doesn't mean it can happen. It cannot happen, but it doesn't mean that it always should, right? The artist needs to focus on the craft, right, or on their gift and their talent, right, to produce the art, right? That is an example, no different from the artisans, the crafts, that we encounter in any organization too. Could be a skill set of, significance that as you develop that, you are the artisan essentially in that organization. To move you into a leadership role, not only may diminish the artistic nature of what you do and the technical, such an interesting mix. I used to kind of poo-poo the art, saying art when it regards the technical aspects because of the loose nature of it. But when people do see what they do as art, that's fantastic, provided we can replicate it, right? but but to move some of those folks into leadership roles is actually to diminish the art somewhat, and to diminish what can be created, but also you're putting them in an environment where they haven't been tested, right? Because and I've seen this the most with engineers, for example. Pick any engineering field, really. some great products come from these folks, right? Then they may run a small staff and maybe even a department. But boy, I've seen it time and time again, and there are exceptions. Let me qualify this. There are exceptions, but I have seen it time and time again, where that engineer then gets promoted to a leadership role and they just weren't meant to lead, right? They may be a better owner, they may be better at skipping the leadership role in the general sense than to be an owner, than to be the leader, right? To be the one who's leading the team. And that's really what we're focused on, who's leading the team, because there are many owners out there, right, that absolutely shouldn't be leaders. They have the wherewithal to create an organization and put the right people in place, right? And from that perspective, think of a sports team, right? You own it, and then you put the right people in place, and they go out and find the right players to put in place, right? And there's a broader things. Now, they are a leader of sorts, right? We're not saying they don't lead, right? But their gift and talent isn't necessarily leading the team, right? That isn't what their skill set is. That isn't what their talent is, right? They aren't meant for that. And to know that. Now, we do know that a lot of our skill sets and talents develop as we go. I even surprised myself as I developed through the years, because I was happy to do the work and happy to be the member on the team and right? But I guess as time and fate and the demand required it, opportunities opened up. And sometimes opportunities, right, open up in the most peculiar way, right? I'm kind of a Jungian when it comes to psychology, but those synchronicities, right, those forks in the road where okay, well, I'll try that. And then you try that, and then you're pretty okay at it, right? So you find that there are people, just as much as people shouldn't lead, really, probably aren't meant to lead, there are people in your organization or in many organizations throughout all of culture who are meant to lead, right? Who are embedded, but because maybe they don't have the education quite nailed down just yet, right? They might be in process, or maybe not at all yet. And this is where the mentoring, right, and the coaching of your team is so important, because if you're thinking that you just have a team and I'm leading my team and we make a product or we provide a service and then we crank it out and the customer is served and we just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, you're missing something. You are supposed to also be developing these leaders for the future. And I know you might be thinking, well, this is a business, right? We're not a leadership factory. Well, you kind of are, right? Because everything you do is being emulated, right? Even those folks who don't lead necessarily in a structured organizational environment lead. Sorry about that. In a structured environment, lead informally in their own ways outside of work, right? They may be coaches for sports, right? They may have side home businesses, right, with their family and so on. They may that they do on the weekends or at night or whatever. You may have folks who are doing that informally already or formally, but outside, right? And they're developing those skills, their parents or grandparents or et cetera. And they're developing young hearts and minds, right? To be, good humans, hopefully in culture, right? That's the hope, right? So like it or not, designing it or intentionally or not, you are having an impact on leaders of tomorrow. But what we're saying here is have that in a conscious place in your brain, right? And up front, not in the back, not in the storage closet, right? Have it up front, because if you do, what you're going to find is not only does that benefit your customers, it does. And who are your customers, right? Let's just quickly revisit this. Your customer is everyone, right? Let's just face it. It's not just those who get your product and service. It's also those people on your team, and all of the people they serve in their life, in the community, and so on and so forth. So you're touching many things. You're not just touching a few. And you have to really carry that mantle with a lot of respect and a lot of, um, you got to have a lot of humility to doing that too. But understand there is an importance to it because of the outcome, but there's an importance to it in the longevity of culture, period. And that's nothing we should take lightly, right? So, not everybody is meant to lead, okay? But not everybody knows they aren't meant to lead, okay? And so the team then may feel rudderless. They may feel, well, this leader was, and I use an engineer as an example, right? It could really come from any functional department, really. But you have somebody become that leader. Now the team understands. They get, obviously there's a development curve, right? We understand people got to get in there and get warmed up and get moving, and build some momentum and have the opportunity. But once they do, this is what we're talking about. Once they start to hit the stride, are they continuing to learn and grow? Are they continuing to lead the team and do all of the things, be engaged, the Gemba walks, all the things that you would do as a manager, but also as a leader to have a broader vision for the organization, right? To be able to see these things means that you're seeing it from a leadership level. I'm seeing all the macro and micro impacts that everything we do and everything I'm doing as a leader too is having on the team and in their lives, because you want your team to have thriving lives. When they're thriving, guess what? Your customers are thriving. I mean, it's just, your product and service customers are thriving as well. So there's such a linkage, right? Everything is connected, essentially. But not everybody is meant for that. Not everybody has the vision for that. Some are more of the technician and the artisan, right? The other side of this coin is some folks are they may be meant to lead themselves, right? This is why I would say some folks aren't meant to lead. That isn't to poke anybody in the eye, right? We see where people struggle and have failed. And nobody should applaud or take any kind of cheer in these things when they occur, because that's not a good thing, right? However, we also learn through these experiences, right? The only way some learn that they aren't, meant to lead is through trying and failing, right? That doesn't mean they should give up. Maybe they just need to build on some skills. But then there is that synergy where you just feel it. Some folks should be leading themselves, right? This is where I'm going with this also is some folks need to be out there leading themselves and maybe a couple people in an area that they're passionate about. Because if those leaders who we can kind of feel that they aren't meant to lead, right? If they aren't noticing it themselves and they aren't noticing that they just don't have connection with folks, say in an organization, and that they're not genuinely engaging, you're going to know, because what will happen is as they struggle to lead, they will start to become, well, let's put it this way, they will start to show disdain for the team, for the workforce, okay? That's how you know, ultimately, and that's how, if you're a leader, you can check yourself. Do I have a disdain for these people? Has it gotten to the point where I am just irritated when I go into the job, right? If I'm going to work, am I just irritated because of this and because of that, because of this? A leader seeing a broader vision understands that there is the forming, storming, norming, and performing and adjourning. That there is a process, right? And that these things that you go through cycles. They understand this. They're not going to be tipped off kilter by a couple little dramatic events, right? They're not going to be pushed off their center because because there was some random thing that occurred that the team now has to overcome. They don't see it as, oh my gosh, drudgery. They will have a passion, right? That's the other thing about an actual leader is that they'll have a passion for the people. If you have a passion for the people, I don't care what you make or what service you provide. If that leader has a passion for their team, right, ultimately the customer, right, that's what we're saying. If they have a passion for that, they could lead anyone in any industry, anywhere. I'm just telling you straight up. This is another thing that you'll find too about some leaders. Another way to tell if they should be a leader, or potentially they're misaligned in the organization that they're in. They don't have the passion for the people. They may not have the passion for the product, and it may just be bleeding through, right? But so they haven't really found maybe their home also, right? Just like, and this all applies. I'm starting with the leader, of course, in this, but some folks aren't meant to be led either. You have leaders, right? Grassroots leaders coming up in an organization that maybe didn't have the opportunity, as I alluded to before, and maybe they haven't really, stepped into it or pushed themselves into opportunities to grow. But you have these folks up and coming. They aren't necessarily meant to be led. They're so independent. They've got everything so nailed down. They're great engaging with their team. They're informal leaders when the leaders are on vacation or out or on trips or traveling or whatever away. These folks, they just get right in there and they're just knocking it out, right? They're just naturals, right? They're natural leaders. And you have folks like that. They aren't meant to be led, right? They are not meant to be led. These are folks that, it would almost be better to groom them up. And if you don't have a role in your organization, to be an advocate, to help find them ways to grow into a leadership role, even if it meant going somewhere else or to another site if you have multiple sites, right? These are folks you'd have to keep an eye on. The challenge is that typically systems don't recognize the natural talent, right? Systems only look at, and this is a difficulty with folks and their resumes and all this stuff, right? Is that we've created a ladder and forgot that some people can, we created a 10-foot ladder and forgot that some people can jump 10 feet high, right? Naturally, right? We've forgotten that people are capable of leaps and bounds beyond what the system's really designed to groom along folks who need the ladder, right? I need a fish ladder essentially to work my way up. Well, there's some people who just jump straight over the dam, right? They're that good, right? And they're not everywhere, but they're out there, and you have to keep your eye open because they'll surprise you. Some of these folks may be very junior in their careers, and that doesn't mean they should just leap into a full-on leadership, broad strokes, large group leadership role, but it definitely means that they can take on more, right? They may be not jumping the entire dam, but they're jumping 3 or 4 of the rungs of the ladder at a time, and they're hungry for it. And but they're not hungry for leadership. They're hungry to contribute because they have a passion for the team. That's the other thing about this. There's being ambitious to want to become a leader and to lead, and sometimes you see this in small organizational ownerships size situations, but where they're anxious to be an owner. I want to be an owner and I want to have my own business. Well, great, fantastic. But if they don't have a passion for the people, right? Because it's the people ultimately on your team. Those are the folks who are making everything happen. They're the folks who are getting it done. And a leader absolutely has to have a passion for the people. And if you don't have a passion for that, as well as what you're doing as an organization, what you're providing for your customers, if you don't have a passion for it, more than likely you aren't meant to lead, right? And you're definitely maybe not meant to lead there, wherever you happen to be. If you have disdain for personality, if you get caught up in the personality thing and office politics and, the little having sidebar conversations because you're trying to deal with drama and all those sorts of things, it's a pretty good indication, pretty good yellow, almost red flag saying, maybe I shouldn't be a leader, potentially a supervisor, or potentially you should be leading somewhere else, right? These are just cues, just the evidence, the breadcrumbs to follow to try to figure out what's going on. And for ownership as well, if you're vetting new leaders to come in and lead your team, you have to ask some questions, obviously, and often we do. But the difficulty is that we kind of leave the humanity out of the out of the human when we're talking about, well, what have I achieved? What have I done? Tell me about a time where you took care of your team. Tell me about how you demonstrated passion for your team in your history, right? Just give me, something. And then you can start to get a feel, right? Especially if they're talking about what they did as a team, right? All right, folks, don't want to drag this one out too far. Remember, hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When we do this, not only do we help to transform culture, but we're also transforming ourselves. And that's important. And if we want to become effective leaders, we always have to be growing and transforming and building upon who we were yesterday, right? Every day. All right, folks. Hope you have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.